Okay, we are recording. Does it say it at the top for you?
Yes, it does.
Okay, cool. Let's do some welcome to BarfBag, everybody that is going to be watching this in the future. We're going to do some intros.
Welcome.
We're going to do some intros, kind of see. We're just going to kind of wing this first one. We did not script any of this out. Aaron is going to start with their intros, and then we'll go from there.
Why would you do that to me?
Yes.
Hello. My name is Erin. Um, my hyperfixations include dinosaurs, anthropology, crime, sociology, and pretty much any of the ologies. There's really nothing that I won't talk about as long as it's an actual discussion and not just an argument of you're right, I'm wrong, kind of that super fun thing. I also like doing art. And yeah, that's about me. What about you, Alex?
Okay, so I'm Alex. My passions, hyperfixations are video games. I play a ton. I don't play as much as I wish I could, but I do play a lot. Music. I listen to music every day, like probably 12 hours of the day is music playing of some sort. Also, debates of any kind. I like having structured arguments and things like that, and just kind of going with it and seeing where the conversation goes as long as we can somewhat stay on topic. I like going off on tangents, but bringing it back is always the fun part. But that's about it. For future reference, my pronouns are he, him. If you want to go ahead.
My pronouns are they, them.
Okay. So, but yeah, we're just the way that this show is going to kind of structure going forward is going to be we're going to have a general topic that we decide at some point. And that's where we'll kind of start the conversation, and it will never end with that conversation ever, but it will start there
Ever.
at least. But okay, so I think where do you want to start? What's the first topic that we should discuss? I think we should pick a really good one that we've talked about in the past.
You you said you had a topic that you really wanted to talk about.
Oh, what was it? Do you remember? Did I tell you what it was?
uh
It wasn't our conversation
I
yesterday,
don't
right?
think no, it wasn't.
Okay. I don't remember what it was. Let's do something soft. We're not gonna go super hard in on it because it's gonna end up most of these are gonna end up being either politics or religion or general philosophy in some of it. So we'll start easy and we'll do the um, like things that don't actually matter. So like for instance, my one of my favorite questions I ask people. I ask almost everyone that I work with. I've asked my wife. I've asked multiple people. And I know I've asked you, is if you could pick one and only one superpower, no other powers are included with it, what would you pick? This always leads to
You
an
in this
argument.
question. You in this question. Um I really like the idea of like being able to transform into other animals, kind of like Mystique does, or like Beast Boy. I think that's pretty cool.
Okay.
So that'd probably be what I get.
Okay, that's interesting. That's I. It's actually I'm kind of having a hard time thinking of a downside to that, so that's not a terrible one. Other than like the obvious glaring
How
ones, is
about
like
you?
do you have the you still have your human brain transformed into these other creatures? Because that's a bit of an issue. Like, what if you transform into a mouse?
No,
Your
honestly,
human-sized brain.
my no, see, like that's kind of my issue is like I really like that idea, but in terms of where does all my mass go? Like if you're
Yeah,
transforming into humans or like human shaped things or like things that could weigh roughly the same as a human, it's not as big of a problem. But then
yeah.
once you get into like I want to be a tiny mouse or I want to be an eel, where does the rest of you go? Are you just a really 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 heavy mouse? Are
Yeah,
you like
because
a
of all
lead
that
mouse?
mass.
Are you just you
That's
just the
funny.
heaviest fucking mouse ever? I
Okay.
don't know. Like I really like that idea, but I don't. I just can't think about it too hard because then it'll be like impossible.
Okay, that's a good downside to think of when it comes to that. Most people, like we've discussed this before, but a lot of people will pick like, oh, I want to be able to fly, and it's like, okay, like Superman flight or like bird flight. Because if it's Superman flight, then without an indestructible body, you have a pretty high likelihood that flying at the speed you're flying at, that could cause some issues because your body can't handle that kind of G-force. Landing is an issue unless you just really know how to slow yourself down adequately. Or like laser eyes. What your eyes are still just your eyes. They can just shoot lasers. So would it melt your eyes out? Would
You
it
know,
burn your face?
it.
I know you argue this because you say, well, with the laser eyes,
It's
they'd
just.
have to be able to handle the lasers.
I'm just saying. I'm just saying. I'm just saying. If we're thinking about like, can we like say if this is a world where everyone has powers or at least some people do?
Yeah, we'll say
Like, does
it's
everyone have
similar.
powers in this hypothetical situation?
We'll say that it's like similar to X Men, where some people do, some people don't.
Okay. So if some people do and some people don't, that means that there's like genetic like switches for it and like gene expression and stuff. And I think if there is genes that trigger it, there are other things that go in tangent with it. So if you have laser eyes, if that is the way that that gene expresses, I feel like there are other things that come along with it. Kind of like if you have laser eyes, then that means your eyes are built for lasers. You can do laser stuff, kind of like how blue eyes are more like susceptible to like sun damage, or like even some eye colors might have more issues with their eyes later on in life. Like I think that if you have superpowers, you will have other kind of genetic switches, except for flight. Flight kind of, sorry, if you hit a window, you're done.
Yeah.
But I think laser eyes specifically, you would have a reinforced skull or something.
Okay. I mean, okay. I guess maybe. I don't know. I like to think maybe even if your eyes are
I have
equipped
been,
for it.
wait. I have been crafting this. I have been crafting this like argument since the first time you asked me this.
Uh,
I was like, wait a second. Wait, there's a way.
I mean, I get it, but at the same time, like even if I concede that their eyes are maybe equipped for this, similar to how blue eyes are more susceptible to whatever. What about their skin, their hair, their eyebrows? I mean, that amount of heat to cause a laser
But
beam.
like, where is? But like, it relates to, because if your eyes are shooting lasers, right? And if like, okay, we'll compare it to, I don't know. I think that if there was laser eyes, not only would your eyes be more equipped, but also your body in general. Same thing with like, if I was to be able to transform into other things, it would supposedly carry over my mass. Like my mass would go along with it. I think laser eyes is sort of similar in the way that it would, I don't know, maybe your eye sockets would be reinforced with, I don't know, something like that. I feel like they'd be reinforced in some way to better, maybe they'd have like, maybe it'd be reflective, and that's what the laser is,
Oh,
like a
maybe, yeah,
prism.
maybe. Okay. I mean, maybe, but if we go down that road, then you can just explain away every downside to everything, though. If they had flight, then they
It's,
clearly
yeah.
genetically evolved to have flight,
No,
so then
wait,
they genetically.
I did say flight was kind of shit. I did
Yeah,
say
but I know,
flight is
but we
kind of
could
not
use that
great.
argument to make like if you had the ability to fly, then genetically you'd probably have like reinforced bones that are like super dense compared to regular bones
Mm,
that impact your
I
falls.
don't,
And
that's not how it works. That's not how flight works, though.
no,
I
I
mean,
know.
let me rephrase that.
I mean,
Like,
human
I
flight
feel
doesn't
like
exist.
people who could fly, and I know. But if humans could fly, I feel like that is either like bone density thing. Like, I think you cannot have heavy bones and be able to fly like that, unless you're like Superman or whatever. But this is, I don't know. I feel like you would have to be light,
I mean, maybe,
or else
but
you'd
if it
like
is
use too much
Superman,
energy while
because
flying.
Superman is the example, so I don't know. But okay, back
Superman's
to get
also, he's not carbon based.
he's just an alien. He's not really. Yeah, I mean, he's not. You're
Yeah,
right. He's not in like
he's
the
not from
mutant
here.
thing. He's
He's
just an
not
alien.
like an X-Men.
No, he's not.
Yeah,
Okay.
he's not a good example.
The few that I know of that are really good that don't typically have glaring downsides. My pick has no downsides. Period. It just doesn't. Is being able to control probability. That has absolutely no downsides. It is you just can control probability. You go to play the lottery, you can change it to where it's 100% chance you're going to win. Other things like that. But also the other one that a lot of people say is being able to hear like telepathy, being able to read other people's minds and stuff. But the glaring problem most people bring up with that is that like, can you switch it on and off, or is it just you're always hearing everyone's thoughts that are around you? What's the radius that it, counts? Things like that. Those are like sort of problems, but I would imagine just like you can have selective hearing now,
Yeah.
you'd have selective telepathy then. But
Or would it be kind of like, I would think telepathy would fall more under the category of like photographic memory. Like it's like even if you don't want it to be remembered, it's there. Like even if you don't want to hear it, it's too late. You've already experienced it. It's always there.
so just like if you're in a crowded room, you just hear all those thoughts at once.
Maybe. Or like I would think that when maybe it's kind of like walking where like whenever you're like a young kid, it's a lot. Like it's a very hard process to learn which, I guess, what to listen to and what not to listen to. But then as you get older, you kind of develop a sense of, all right,
Okay.
this is good to listen to. This doesn't need to be listened to. I don't need to know what the 7-Eleven clerk is thinking, but it'd be helpful to
Okay.
know what my boss wanted, kind of.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense.
But that would
Well,
be so
okay.
overstimulating. I would not want to
What
be
are
alive.
your
If
what are your
telepathy was mine, I wouldn't want to be around.
what are your downsides for mine for probability then?
You didn't even. I So when it comes to the probability, it never says exactly how those events came to be. And although, again, this is not necessarily a problem that you yourself would face, but say, for example, like I want $1 million to just fall from the sky. Kind of weird, but all right. And like I think of what happened in the span of you wanting that to happen outside of your little wish. Like what happened outside for that money to fall? Like obviously it came from somewhere. The probability isn't like there's the money. It's more like you're affecting the chances of something happening. So that means that there is something happening in the world that is allowing what you want.
So it
So
almost
if you say like, "Oh man, I don't want to go to work today," then a,
you
a,
would
a
almost
plane crashes into your.
I feel like you'd almost have to be like you'd I feel like it would turn the universe, not that for me it wouldn't change because I'm a determinist, but it would turn the universe into a determinist universe where I always would have wanted $1 million to have fallen because in order for that to be the case, for it to have fallen, all the steps up to that point, there had to have been $1 million loaded onto a plane that came from here, was going to there, was intended. All the plans for that to be from here to there. The $1 million to exist in
Yes,
it would turn. I think it would turn the universe into a deterministic universe where everything is only happening because of the causal chain that's going on. That's a
yes,
cute cat.
yes. Appearance.
But yeah, I think that it would. I think that it would have to be that way for it to work, because otherwise, like, yeah, you're right. Like me wanting that $1 million to fall in my lap doesn't make $1 million materialize in the sky and then just fall. It had to have all the steps
Because
up
I
to that
just,
point to make it make sense. Would have to happen.
yeah, but I mean, I can also see it being like butterfly effect of like, oh man, again, like, oh man, I don't want to work today. And then because you put that into whatever, into the universe, now there's going to be, I don't know, a semi truck driver who falls asleep at the wheel and now crashes, and that whole cargo comes into your store, and now you can't, you're, oops, now you're off work. You don't have to be there anymore. But then I feel like it's just this domino effect of, yes, you don't have to work anymore, but now you have other problems that you have to deal with as a result. I think it's like kind of like you'd have to very much specify whenever you use your power what would happen. Like if you said, I want to go to work, or I don't want to go to work, but I want it to be in the most nonviolent way possible, then maybe something casual would happen. But I think if you just go open ended questions, I don't
Yeah,
know. I feel like it'll
I agree, and
go
I
too
think
far.
I mean, me being who I am, I would always be as damn specific as possible with it anyway. Like if I was like, oh, I don't want to go to work
Mm-hmm.
today, I want the probability of the fire alarm triggering and the water, from the sprinklers coming on and the fire department coming and declaring that we have to close while they do investigation. What I would be so specific with it that you're right. I mean, it wouldn't matter. Like, I wouldn't be like putting other people's lives in jeopardy as much as I can possibly manage that. But
Yeah.
yeah, I would
But like
always
just
be that
imagine,
specific.
like I feel like that sort of superpower just really, you'd have to be so on point. Like if you, because imagine if you were like drunk and you weren't as hyper specific as you wanted to be,
Yeah,
and you said like, ah man, I want this to happen. I
I
would really
wasn't Taco
want, I
Bell.
don't know, I want Taco Bell, and then somebody, like you just say that, and then all of a sudden somebody who is, I don't know, door dashing accidentally door dashes Taco Bell to you, but then the person who wanted that food isn't going to get it, and the door dasher is now like, oh, I drove all the way out here for what?
Yeah, there'd be a lot. Yeah, like
I
just
don't actually.
consequences to it.
Yeah, yes,
Okay.
you'd have to, and I mean, like, as somebody who already has anxiety and I already think too much about everything all the time, that's panic inducing. I could never.
Okay. That makes
I would
sense.
be so like, oh my god,
It
should I
is a
do
very
this? I don't
specific.
know. Should I?
Yeah, it's a very specific power. I mean, you'd have to really know what you're doing for you to want that one, which is why I chose it because that's how I would be. And you're right. I mean, if you're drunk or high or something like that, and you make a stupid decision, then yeah, that's not
Or
ideal.
even if you were angry,
Or yeah, I mean,
like
yeah, I mean,
if in a fit of rage you said something,
yeah, that's true. It's potentially
you
problematic.
know,
I see some
you know what
downside.
they say about great power.
Comes great responsibility. But yeah, okay. So yeah, there's some more that are questionable. There's a lot that are just glaringly obvious. Like, oh man, I wish I could walk through
Super
walls.
strength,
What?
super strength.
So yeah,
I
exactly.
feel like
Yeah.
that, like being like you just, even if your bones were like reinforced with something, like the, I don't know, because then I get trapped into the thinking of super strength basically just means that your muscles are really good, like they're really strong, but that doesn't mean that your skin is.
Yeah.
Like I would imagine that your skeleton and your muscle is reinforced. But if you go ham on a concrete wall, is your hand okay? The
Yeah. I guess it
concrete
goes.
wall might be gone, but like what about, yeah,
Yeah.
like it might be all intact, but is your skin I
Yeah.
don't know.
That makes sense. Yeah. There's a lot of them that are
It could also
that
be really heavy.
clear. Yeah. Um, okay. I like that. Okay, so okay, but that's a question that I've asked a lot that typically leads down a large rabbit hole, and it usually leads to an argument. Surprisingly, this time it wasn't much of an argument, thankfully, but it does a lot of times lead to one because we're both so argumentative, but we're doing it in good faith. We're doing it in fun.
Hmm.
So both of us do this all the time, but we take the opposite stance, even if it's not what we agree with or the stance we actually believe, just to further the argument and the conversation because we're both assholes. I mean, that is what it is.
Yeah. Have you considered potentially
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Um,
just
but
feeding
the
in?
other one, the other one that I really liked that we did that was actually really funny. Gabby brings this up a lot. Is the when you texted me about the would you want to be a witch or a mage? I think it was.
Hmm.
Um, and it's like I didn't
I
know the difference.
and so like typically in fantasy, it a mage is somebody who learns from books, goes to school. Think of like Harry Potter and stuff, where they're in a actual education, where they're reading books, they're being taught things, and there's like a very strict regimen to it. While witchcraft is obviously, at least in a fantasy sense, or I mean in a present sense, it's a lot more natural, being more in tune with the natural elements. Um, and typically under the tutelage of like an older witch, but it's not quite a it's an inter not an intern it's like an internship rather than going to college. It's just you're getting those hands-on technical skills, and it's just the difference between a mage and a witch.
Yeah.
And you'd want to be
Do you think? Well, I think. Okay. Do you think the rules from these separate fantasy like tropes? Do you think that they apply? Like, for instance, in witchcraft, if you fuck up and you don't do the right thing, or you are making a potion and you throw the wrong ingredient in, that it has potentially catastrophic repercussions for you not knowing what you're doing. Where if you do a spell and as you know you're doing a spell circle and you enchant something wrong, then it could cause it to backfire or something. Versus in a mage in a like a in a for a mage where it's more like educational, typically there's no downside to you doing something wrong, which isn't even necessarily true because there clearly is, especially in Harry Potter. You got Seamus who has stuff blow up in his face all the time, though he is the only one to do that. Um, I think the mage, if those rules apply, I think I'd rather the mage regardless. One, because I'm more school oriented anyway, um, in that sense, but also I
nerd.
feel like there's less potential consequences that come with that, with being a mage than being. I'd rather not accidentally turn myself into a frog.
But I mean, doesn't that happen in magic as well? Like if you're learning a transmutation spell or if you're trying to transform into something and you mess up, wouldn't you become that anyway?
I mean,
I think
kind of,
like it's
but
I I think it's kind of at least in this very specific type of like fantasy trope that we're talking. I would think if you mess up a potion, it's kind of like putting in the wrong spice when you're cooking. It just kind of throws off the flavor of everything. And because not all of those components are working correctly, it just doesn't work at all.
okay, okay. I mean,
That's
yeah.
what
Then
that's. I think it's
I don't
kind
know.
of similar to like learning magic in that sense.
I do think I would prefer. I'm not a super naturey person anyway. Like I can enjoy and appreciate nature and the beauty of the trees and all whatever bullshit. But it's not super me. But like definitely going to like a old castle and walking around the enchanted hallways and the staircases. Then like I would much rather that than like be learning in some witch's hut in a swamp somewhere, or whatever else. It doesn't have the
Wow,
same appeal for me.
it doesn't have to be in a swamp hut. It can be anywhere.
I know, but that's what pops in my head when I think of like a
Swamp hut.
naturey witch is like, oh, they have the long nose with the warts and the black big hat, and they're mixing a potion in
Hmm.
their cabin in the swamp that's up like pretty high and with a
Yeah, and
cool
they're
ladder. Yeah, that's what pops
luring
in my head when
children
I'm thinking of
to
like a
fall in.
nature. Yeah, when I'm thinking of a nature witch, like that's what I'm thinking of, and it just doesn't have the same appeal to me. I do assume that that is what has the appeal for you, though, is the whole nature version of it. Yeah,
Yes, yes. I that would be so fun. I mean, nothing against school, nothing against wizards and like learning. Um, I just feel like I wouldn't want to learn magic from an institution that's just been around for a long time because I feel like as institutions change, certain information, certain magics wouldn't be able to come with them. Like, I don't know. I feel like there's such a higher likelihood for you to just be taught magic incorrectly at an institution,
Okay.
based on like, oh well, this is what our predecessor learned, and that's what we're going to teach. Even if that's not necessarily the best way, it's just because it's kind of a schooling thing. I don't know,
Yeah. Okay.
but
I
I would definitely. I feel like I'm a very hands-on person. If someone was just like, all right, take this and that, throw it together, you got it. I would love that,
okay. That makes sense.
and I wouldn't have
I,
to be in
I
school
I can see. I mean, they're both appealing. I like the idea of like magic. Anyway, either way, I think it
in
sounds
any
appealing.
in any way, shape, or form.
So, is there in the naturey version? Because I know, like when you were describing it before, you were talking about like spell circles and um, obviously there's like cauldron stuff and potions and things, but that's in both. But like there's spell circles and more incantation than anything. Is there still wands? Is there like a need for a magical conduit, or is it just through your body?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, I would think there needs to be a magical conduit. I mean, I don't think it would have to necessarily be a wand. I feel like it could be like anything, like a ring. I like the idea of a ring.
Okay.
Um, I think anything that can kind of take the strain of, because a lot of the times, are we talking, is magic in the air? Like, is it all around us and we're just taking it and using it? Or is it inside of people?
I think it's in the way that I think
Because if
about it
it's
is that it's inside
like,
of people.
uh, okay. Because
Yeah.
I think more it's all around us and we're using it.
Okay. I get
But
that.
why do you say
I think the reason I picked that is because it leads to more shonen type situation. There's a chosen one who, for no absolutely no
yes,
reason, has more magic than everyone else, and he's gonna beat the bad guy who also, for no reason, has more magic than everybody else. That is
yes,
more
yes,
my
and then
appeal. Yeah, that's
there's a
definitely
scene where the main character touches some like how strong are you? Some
yeah, and it's like
gets
it breaks
what's
the
the word that
freaking
I want? Yes, yes, the magical measuring tool. Ah, oh, how strong is he? He's the new kid on the block, and then it explodes every
yeah.
time because they're
That's
just
yeah.
so strong.
That is absolutely what appeals
I
to me.
You just want to be an OPMC. I get it.
Yeah.
You just want to be the strongest one. No, I'm definitely more of a like it's all around us and we're just utilizing it kind of person because I mean, I don't know. I feel like that just makes sense. Like if we're going to be using I don't know. I just like the idea that it's all around us because if there's I feel the magic in the air that's all around us has in this instance we're just sensitive to it. Like the muggles, if we're talking Harry Potter, those who cannot do magic, they're just not as sensitive to what is already constantly present. And people
Okay.
who can do magic and people who are sensitive to magic can feel that and now utilize it, which is why they probably need conduits like wands,
That
earrings.
makes sense. I think it leads more.
It'd be pretty cool if you had like a septum
I think a bull
or
of
glasses.
what? Oh, yeah, the are you talking about my glare?
No, 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 no. Like if your glasses were your conduit.
Oh yeah, like if you could just make anything like your magical con. Yeah, I mean that'd be really cool. It'd be interesting to see how people would kind of customize it. But I think another thing that kind
Yeah.
of probably subconsciously draws you to that side that I wouldn't think about unless we're having this conversation, honestly, is that if you have the magic that's kind of all around us and you're just channeling it through you with whatever conduit you use, versus it's just inside you, and the muggles would just be people who aren't born with it, and the magical have it. I think my version of that does tend to lead to more supremacy, I guess is the word that I'm looking for. Well, like You know what I
He just
mean?
went right out there with it. Yes, yes.
Yeah, and I think that
Because
it
I mean,
leads
that's like
like
the whole book. Like I'm
yeah,
not a
like I
big
mean
fan
that's
of Harry
literally
Potter.
it's literally yeah, in Harry Potter where like the magical belief a lot of them the fascist ones think that they should rule over everyone including the non-magical should be their slaves essentially.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's also just the idea that a book created a slur and then was just like, yeah, it's just for like non-magic
Yeah.
people.
Yeah. It's
It's just
yeah.
it's
But
a
yeah, I know
slur. I mean,
I can
it is a slur. It is a derogatory term.
yeah. I can see why
And I mean, no hate, no hate. I know you really like Harry Potter. It's just
no, I get it. There's a lot of problems.
sometimes,
There's a lot of
sometimes
in order for me to like it, first of all, the
some
main
cats
reason I
deep.
like it is just childhood and having it growing up. It was kind of my
Nostalgia.
thing that distracted me. One other thing we didn't do in our intros is we're both fucked with trauma, absolutely riddled with it. Uh,
Real
so
bad.
yeah, so but like that was one of the things that kind of helped me with that, just disappearing into that. That's what video games did for me too. But like, there's that, but there's also like there's a ton of
Escapism.
what.
I said that's escapism.
Yeah, exactly. So yes, and so it had that for me, but also it was I like being able to invest myself in something, and if it's not interesting by itself, I won't do it, even though there is stuff to learn. But like I'm obviously interested in like the Harry Potter stuff, so like having that option to go and find out a lot more than just what you get on the surface from either reading the books or watching the movies is always interesting to me. It's the same with like Lord of the Rings. I'm not as into that, but I do like it, and I like how much lore there is that's just under the surface
Mm,
of the movies and the books um, to find out. And so, like, that was a big deal for why I wasn't super into Harry Potter. But it definitely does take some selective. What you want to just discount and mark off that this thing doesn't count. There's so much just not great things and not great writing that
you
takes
have
place
to
in those
you
books.
really it's a cherry pick. You really have to cherry pick your Harry Potter experience.
Yeah. Granted, when I was
And
doing it
I
when I was growing up, I just kind of didn't understand those points to it. Like I would have never, until someone said
yeah,
something to
you were
me.
a kid.
Yeah, I would have never been like, "Oh, Cho Chang, that's a problematic thing." I would have never, because I wouldn't have thought about that. That was beyond my comprehension at that point. Or the whole stuff with like the
Yeah.
goblins in the bank and everything. Like all of that was just I wasn't that aware of the world yet, and so at that time it didn't exist to me. And now that I understand it, I'm like, "Ugh, I really just wish that wasn't in there, but unfortunately it is. So I have to just erase it from my mind and like the rest of it."
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, you also kind of have to think about the time period in which a lot of kind of old like adults who like Harry Potter kind of you have to think about when they were reading that because like I
Yeah.
mean in the early 2000s 2010 completely
Oh,
different world. I
yeah.
mean people were out here throwing racial slurs like it was Christmas just you get
Yeah.
one like Oprah just you get one you get one you get one we all get one.
Yeah.
um
It was very different back
and
then.
yeah
But
I wasn't as big of a fan of Harry Potter. I mean, obviously I watched the movies because who didn't?
yeah.
But I tried to read the books. I never really got all that invested in them. I found them way too boring. I felt like a lot of it was just like words that were just words and didn't really serve a point.
Yeah.
And then once it came to light, well, more like once I became aware of how problematic the author is. I'm someone who really struggles separating the art from the artist because I don't really think there is a way to do that. Because I mean, anytime you use anything related to an art, I mean, if you don't like, if you're, I don't know, like if you don't like Picasso as a person, but you still like Picasso's art, aren't you technically supporting him by liking his art or thinking that his art is cool or like buying his stuff? Like, that's kind of where I am with J.K. Rowling. Like, sure, cool, you did this thing, but because you're not a good person, I don't care to engage in what you have. or like what you've done.
Yeah. I
At least
do.
that's
I agree, and yeah, no, I'm the same. And I wanted to go on as the Harry Potter fan. I want to state for the record, I absolutely disagree with all
okay.
the shit she said and has done, and the things
Yes,
she's a monstrous person, like one of the worst
she is.
out there right now. I mean, it's insane. Mainly the reason why I even still have anything to do with Harry Potter is purely nostalgia,
Maybe,
the actors and stuff. I
yeah.
really enjoy the actors, and most of them have absolutely denounced any association with her, and I can appreciate that. But they were just really
Hmm.
good at what they did and kind of making you feel a part of the world. And that had nothing to do with her. She was not the reason for that, thankfully. But yeah, I get where you're coming from with being able to separate them, and it's definitely I agree. And if it was more serious things than, like, for instance, we'll talk about like the Hogwarts game, like the game that came out. One,
Hmm.
I really wanted to play it mainly because obviously, like I said, it was a huge part of my childhood, and being able to physically go and like walk around Hogwarts and experience things from this world that's been in my head for a decade at least. Um, was just such a cool idea. Like I would love that for almost anything. Like if they came out with a Lord of the Rings game that was like lore accurate to everything that happened in the movies and stuff, that'd be insane to like go through
That'd
like
be an
the
insane game.
yeah, like to go through the mines of Moria or whatever they're called, and like all that cool stuff would be so cool to just be able to, without like just watching it, you're limited to the perspective of the camera. You can go do whatever you want to do in that space.
Hmm.
That is so neat. So I was really wanting to play it for that, and I was completely ready to not play the game if the people around me thought that was going to be problematic. Um,
Hmm.
Thankfully, I mean, I had a couple people in my life that were trans. I'm surrounded by people in the LGBTQ community. I myself am sort of in it. I don't want to put myself in the same position as most others because they have it significantly worse than I do because of what they are and things like that. But I do consider myself pan just to make it simplified. But it's a little more complicated than that. But like, I'm in there. But I went to my trans friends and I went to other people that are in the community and we're like, hey, listen, I know all the things about J.K. Rowling and how shitty she is and all the things that have happened with that. But I really want to play this game because it's just such a big part of my childhood and I really want to just explore the space and just see all that. But if you tell me that that's a problem for you and you'll think of me differently because I play it, I will not play this game, and they all said that they didn't care. And really, I get that there was a big uproar from specifically the trans community, but like the people around me is ultimately who I'm going to care about the most because I directly am affected by them. And the rest of them kind of are going to fall to the wayside just because, at least for this instance, because it's not going to directly affect my day to day life like it does physically with my friends and my coworkers and things like that. So I played it.
Hmm.
To be honest, I can say this and enjoy saying this. It wasn't as great as what it could have been, and it was kind of not good. Um, it had its moments. It had some very cool moments, and like the world itself was very cool. I enjoyed it, and it was definitely immersive. Everything else was just kind of shit. The spells worked terribly. The movement was terrible. The story was not good. So I wouldn't go back and play it again. So she has that on her
Hmm.
record that she made a subpar, or she at least supported making a subpar game. So that's good.
Yeah, I do. I'm pretty sure the people who made the game were kind of separated from her. Like I know she did not have as much of an influence on the way that the game played out.
Yeah,
And I know that was the argument for a lot of people like, hey, it's okay to enjoy it because she really didn't make it. It was these people and these people aren't bad.
yeah.
Um I the only thing that I remember about that game, I never played it, but I watched my brother and my brother-in-law play it and I was like, what is going on? Why are you rubber banding over? What happened? What I thought you were doing a spell. What happened?
Yeah, it was
Just
very weird,
it
and
just was very janky.
a lot of it did not. That's the one thing I do not. I think is weird. It's kind of unfortunately just kind of the product of how as time goes on we get better and better things in terms of video games, in terms of movies. We get better visuals because
Hmm.
of what computers and technology can do now. So like what bothers the crap out of me is how like the movies from like for instance the Fantastic Beast movies, which are the most recent movies that were made, have some of the most
Hmm.
cool graphics and cool visuals and stuff in them that make no sense and don't consistently flow with how things worked in the original Harry Potter universe, like operation and things like that.
Yeah.
Just it doesn't make any sense that there's now this cool way to do it because now technology can make that look like that. When they couldn't do it before, they had to have
Hmm.
ways around it. And so things just there's no consistency when it comes to it, and that does bother me. It's the same thing with like when you were talking about people rubber banding around. That's like I think that was a version of like apparition sort of. But that's nowhere in the movies. It's nowhere in the books that you can do it in that way. But the video game can do it, so they made you be able to do it. So it looks cool and it looks flashy, but it's like, yeah, but it doesn't
But
make any sense with
it
how
makes
the
no
story.
lore
Yeah,
sense.
yeah, and
Yeah.
so yeah, I will say, I agree.
It's
I
a
don't
fan
agree with.
game. It's a fan
Yeah,
game.
I don't think. I think that that argument that oh well she had nothing to do with it so it's okay to play. I do think that that's a bad argument. I don't agree with that whatsoever because no matter how much she did not have any influence on the game whatsoever. That's not the point. She's still going to profit from it. She's still going to gain something from it. People who don't know all the awful things she did that
Yeah.
maybe haven't even seen the movies or books are going to play the game and they're going to be like, wow, this is really cool. Who made this? And it's going to ultimately come back to her and they're going to inevitably support her because they don't know the rest of it, and that's unfortunate. But I do think that's a bad thing. I do think the one cool thing you may not know this, maybe you saw this on TikTok, but in the game, because she had so little to do with the development, and there were obviously things they were not going to tell her. In the game, there is a portrait you can find that is literally her being burned on a stake, which is hilarious.
Shady. Shady.
Yeah, it's super cool,
I
and I
like
like that.
that. I mean, it's wow. Okay.
Yeah, they did the developers
It's
like there was a lot of
explicit.
developers. It is 100% her. I don't remember. Like I have to go look it up to see what like definitely says it's her. But one, it looks exactly like her, and two, I think there's a
Hmm.
description when you go to it and you like interact with it. It gives you like a description or maybe some dialogue that definitely hints that it's her without explicitly saying it because they'd probably get in trouble for doing that. Um, but yeah, it's her.
I think that's a crime. I think if
Yeah,
they explicitly, I mean, isn't that a threat?
yeah, I'd probably. So
Like,
yeah,
nah,
it's
it's
cool.
a quirky, fun little fantasy magic game.
Yeah. So it's
It's not how
cool.
we feel about you in real life. It's okay.
Yeah. There's a lot of the developers on the game definitely did not. They came out and said like we don't agree with her. We're going to make this game how the fans want it. We're going to make this explicitly because the fans want it this way. We want nothing to do with what's going to make her happy, what she cares about, anything to do with that. And so that's why things like this were able to sneak in. There's a couple other little Easter eggs like that are sort of like that in the game, but I don't remember the most of them. That one was the first one that anyone found, so it was a big freaking deal when it happened. Um, but yeah, no, okay. So I wanted to get your opinion on this because it's a hot. I guess it's a hot take. We'll just say that it's a hot take. Uh,
Okay.
I think that initially, at the very beginning of this, like I know that she's been problematic her entire career. I was unaware of all of that stuff, like with the goblin stuff and that being anti-Semitic, and with Cho Chang and that being obviously very racist name to come up with someone of Asian descent. Beside all that stuff, because I didn't know any of that, I think when she first started, J.K. Rowling, when she first started tweeting, and it was about the stuff that she ultimately would end up saying, I don't think she was necessarily or inherently being. I don't think she was trying to be transphobic. I think she was trying to say something from her, whatever her perspective might be, and I don't think she was trying to be transphobic. I don't think that the way she meant it was transphobic, but I think that what happened was she got some backlash because of people who interpreted it that way, and that's fine. I get it. I probably would have read it that way too, looking through the correct lens. But she got some backlash because of that. And then instead of apologizing like an adult and like she should have done, she doubled down and just made everything worse and then snowballed into this alt right, like anti Semitic,
It's
anti
bad.
trans LGBTQ person that she is now. I don't think she always was that way. I think that it's because she got negative critique back on what she said, and she decided that she really wanted to stick to this point, and coming with that was just enveloped her, you know? What do you think?
Okay. I I don't know. I really haven't really I have not been all that invested in her Twitter stuff. It was just more of I knew she said things and I like looked at what she said and I was just like, all right, cool. I guess I don't like her anymore. I didn't really like her to begin with. So it was just I had a neutral opinion of her and just seeing the way that she because I mean, you can say something and you might have meant it in like a wrong way because I get it. But that's not the initial statement doesn't matter as much because this is where we are now. Like I don't really
Yeah,
care if she didn't
yeah,
mean it in a necessarily transphobic way. This is how she's turned out.
yeah. I think
Um,
that it's at that moment. I don't think that intent is super important anymore. When it comes to things you say,
mhm,
especially on the internet, intent is like the least important thing that matters with anything that you say. It is how it
yeah,
is communicated and how it's understood that matters more than
media
anything.
literacy.
Yeah, it's nobody cares about the intent because you could mean it in a very nice way and it's not going to matter because that's not how anyone took it, and their feelings
Yeah.
now aren't going to change because you didn't mean it that way. That's not how that works most of the time. Some people maybe if they're really gullible that way, but then fine. But
Do you think? Do you think if she did say like my bad, sorry, like prior to where she is now, do you think if she apologized, she would not be as
yes,
kind of disowned by a lot of the
I
people
do
who?
think so. I do think so. I think that so the thing that started it, if I'm remembering correctly, it's been so long and I haven't really ever. It's such a long string of tweets, like it's ridiculously long. So like I haven't gone through and read
Mm-hmm.
it because I don't have the patience to do that. But if I remember right, what it started out was it was talking about I think the way what she said was something along the lines of like I I'm gonna paraphrase. I think it was trans people don't like trans women don't have it nearly as bad as biological women because biological women have periods and they're awful.
Turf.
Yeah, exactly. So, and I think that's what she said, and I'm sure she meant it that way, but I don't think she meant it as like trans women aren't women. I don't think she explicitly meant that, and I don't think she meant it as like trans women are less than or trans shouldn't exist or any of that stuff. I don't think because nothing prior to that. I feel like if she felt that way, that she would have been probably more outspoken about it. Um, but she said this, and then if she would have gotten negative feedback on that, and then been like, you know what, I didn't mean it that way, but I understand how you took it, and I apologize about that. I really don't want anyone to feel that way. Whatever her apology may have been, then I think because of the snowball effect, I think that the community would have maybe been more receptive to her apology, which would have then, like I said, I think what made this whole thing happen and her turn out the way she did was because she got hate from it and then decided to fight hate with hate, and then it just that obviously doesn't work, so it just perpetuated where she went and
Yeah,
like thrust her into this mindset of, well, damn, you can't say anything negative about anything or else people are just going to witch hunt you. Ha 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 ha. So
literally the game.
so like I feel like that kind of thrust her into that. I feel like if it had gone just slightly differently and she maybe had made an apology after her first tweet, and then maybe it would have turned out differently where she wouldn't be how she is today because she would have seen some sort of positive. I think she thinks a lot of people think because they have one negative experience with someone from a specific community, that's their deciding factor. Oh, you were mean to me and you happen to be gay. Well, all gay people are assholes now because you were mean to me and you're gay. So that means all gay people are like that. So now I don't like gay people. A
Oh,
lot of
wait.
people are like that. And it sucks because that's a very stupid, narrow way to look at the world. But that's just kind of what some people do. And I think that maybe that's what happened here was that she got a negative experience because of some backlash, and so she took it as that's the whole LGBTQ community. They just hate, 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 and that's all they do, and then just spiraled into this fucking void she can't come out from.
I I would again have to kind of see when exactly that tweet came out, because if it came out during a time where, because I mean, prior to, I'm trying to think of when exactly like queerness became more accepted socially, and like expressing queerness and just like, you know, being gay or being trans in public. And it just kind of depends, because if she said it in a time where having that kind of opinion was not super cool, and that was the sentiment on the internet, like if she had said that prior to a lot of movements to like more inclusive movements, it probably wouldn't have been taken as much. But because the climate of Twitter at the time had changed to be more inclusive, what she said was bad.
Yeah,
So I
if I
maybe
remember
the
right, it
intent
was back
wasn't great
when.
to begin with.
Yeah, if I remember right, I'm pretty sure it happened back like it was right there at the beginning of when that stuff was starting to like be okay in public. Of like trans people like because I'm not gonna
Okay,
lie like
so it
I'd never even heard of a trans person trans anything until like I'd already graduated from high school. Like legitimately I'd never even heard that term. I didn't know that was a thing. um I knew that like cross dressing was a thing and that like drag queens and all that. I knew all of that, but I had never heard anything about trans anything up to that point. And I think that was just because it was such
mm-hmm.
a you don't speak about it thing. And so as a kid, as a child in
Yeah,
school, in high school and stuff, you're not going to hear about it because the general consensus says don't talk about it. Don't show it on TV. Don't do anything. I was also not nearly on as I mean at that time internet was still new anyway, but like I wasn't as online or media literate at that point. I didn't watch anything. I didn't watch TV hardly ever. I didn't watch so every bit of information about how the world worked came from parents, which arguably weren't there, um,
I'm
or
looking up whenever she tweets that.
yeah, or it was during a time when all my information came from like teachers and stuff, obviously, which that kind of stuff wasn't being discussed in schools at the time. And then it came from friends and things. So it was like it was. I had a very limited outlook on the world and how that kind of worked. So at that time, it wasn't a super talked about thing. And I think when she made those tweets was like obviously like the trans movement, if you want to call it that, was had started. It was kind of ramping up a little bit. It was becoming more talked about, but it wasn't nearly to the level that it has been for the past like 5 years, last maybe even 10 years. I think she tweeted it
Um,
back in like 2012, if I'm remembering. I don't
wow,
know, probably off.
ancient times,
I know that's 12 years ago. That's insane.
ancient times.
But oh, one other thing that I
I
did
couldn't
remember
find it.
again.
All I found was the I stand with Maya thing in 2019. Mm,
Her first. Um, Hold on. It says 2020. There's no way it was that recent. Maybe that's a different controversy. Oh, 2018. Okay,
2018? She said that in
not as long ago as I
2018?
not as long ago as I thought it was. Why
Oh
does that
my
feel?
on. Yeah, no, she canceled as hell. There ain't no excuse for that.
I mean, there's no
You can keep
excuse
that
for
on
it
a
regardless.
Facebook group. I
Yeah,
know, but like in terms of the internet like climate at the time, not
yeah,
there again, no excuse. But if she posted that back in like 2012, I would have been like cringe and she's an adult and she should know better. And that is unfortunately the way that it was at the time. And again in 2012 I was 11.
yeah,
And it shouldn't be accepted, and I would still hold the same opinion even if she did post it in 2012. I would still be like bad, no
yeah.
good, that's cringe. That's
Um,
not a good person thing to do with the amount of platform that she has.
yeah. The other thing that, because I'm gonna forget, the other thing that was a slap in the face to J.K. Rowling that I think is super funny is there was obviously the painting I talked about. One of the people, so if you go into Hogsmeade, if you know what Hogsmeade is, it's the little town with all the shops.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so if you go into Hogsmeade, there's the three broomsticks, and if you go into the three broomsticks, there's like a barkeep. The barkeep is a trans person.
Mm-hmm. Ooh,
Yeah,
really showing her.
yeah. It was they used they them pronouns. They didn't specifically say that, but every time the character is referenced in the story, because they're in the story quite a bit. Um, every time the person is referenced in the story, they say they or them. Every single time, they're never referred to as a specific as he or she or whatever. But
As a
they're
binary.
dressed. They're dressed as a woman. They're a trans female. They're dressed as a woman. They've got their hair done like a traditional woman. And then, but they have the the voice actor is a trans woman, and their voice is like a little bit deeper than what you'd expect from the way the character looks.
Mm-hmm.
So I like that too. I really liked that character actually. They were very smart ass, like sarcastic person. It was very my level of humor and personality, I guess. Um, but yeah. So okay, I don't. God, we started on magic and we got to talking about transphobia, so that was interesting.
I Yeah, and wait. I am just gonna say that even kind of showing up and being like, haha, yeah, this is hot. This is this wizarding world, and we don't care. There's trans people here, but again, she's still making money off of it, and she's not
Yeah,
changing her opinion,
yeah.
and it's just kind of
I like
are
it only because
like
it does, like, it has to feel something. I wouldn't say good, but like that's something less than good, but not bad. I don't know how to word that, but like it has to feel,
okay,
yeah, it has to feel like something toward two people in the trans community that wanted to play the game because there's a ton of people that way. They wanted to play. Obviously, there was a lot of internal struggle for a lot of trans people because they really wanted to play it because they really liked Harry Potter before she went on this fucking tirade of transphobia. And so they really, really wanted to play the game, but they don't want to
2018.
support her. But they don't. But, there's a whole internal struggle going on there. And I feel like the ones that did decide that, hey, I do want to play this game, and then they get to see that there was some sort of representation in the game for them, had to do something for them. I mean, it's not. It's again,
Cathartic,
it's
cathartic
not
a little
great.
bit.
Yeah, it's not great. It's like okay, yeah, but it's still in a game that's going to support her. But like, it's better than nothing. I guess is the way that I would put it. Is that it
True.
could have, it could have been worse. It could have been that the trans people were the freaking bad guys of the game, like or the dwarves were. So I mean, it could have been worse. So like, I feel like it did something positive there in a negative space.
Yeah,
You know
I
what I
see
mean?
it. Yeah.
So, but yeah, no, but that was that's a good one. I want to ask again because we talked about this last night, and I want to just talk about it again because it's a very brief conversation. But um, hard solipsism. So, um, what? Okay, you think the same that I do. I want to make sure that we're on the same page because most people. Kai, he was just like up on the. Kai,
Puppy!
what's up, buddy?
Puppy!
Um, most people think that it's not, and myself included, think that it's not even worth discussing. There's no point talking about it because there's no answer,
And yeah,
and
here
there's
we are.
potentially no knowable answer. Do you agree with that?
Hmm. Yes. I
Okay.
it's it's one of those things where like, okay, Anne, like where do you want to go with this conversation?
Okay.
Those, I feel like those who believe in it are not going to change their opinion, and
Yeah.
those who have nothing to do with it and don't want to engage in such, no, that's mean. Engage in such discussions, they're just not even going to bother. And I'm kind of the same. Like I remember this conversation, and I remember like thinking about it, like in the back of my head, being like
Yeah.
what even?
Okay. So the main reason that I bring it up and the reason I talk about it is because a lot of people, it really drives me crazy when this happens. But in discussions, especially when it's a religious debate and they're talking about, it's a atheist versus X person, Islam, Christian, whatever, it doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
Um, when they get backed into a corner, when whoever the religious person gets backed into a corner, they go, well, yeah, but I mean, how would we know that any of it's real? How would we know that? And it's like, yeah, but you can't use that as like it's a point towards your side because it's a point towards nobody's side. Because you're
Yeah,
right. I mean, and what if? I mean, if none of it matters and it all is just a simulation, is all fake, whatever, then it doesn't matter which belief is correct because nothing matters because the world doesn't matter. But that happens a
yeah.
lot when they get back
We're just
into
on a rock floating in space.
yeah. Okay.
Hypothetically, I mean, depending on if you, I don't know, believe it's a simulation or not. Just
Yeah.
I have so many questions with that. Like I want to but because we both share the same opinion of like no, it just I just want to find someone to be like, can you tell me about this? Can you really tell
I'm
me about this?
sure.
What is grass? Is grass
I'm
real? Are we touching
I'm
grass? Is grass real?
I'm positive that we can, maybe not now, but like eventually when we get a little bit of people watching this, that we can find someone out there that's a hard solipsist and bring them on and have them be like a special guest, and we can just grill them with questions. Because yeah, it's a point. I
And
mean, to me, it's
that's another thing.
God,
Like I'm not asking these questions to be like fuck you. I'm asking these questions as like a genuine, like I'm curious. Like I want to hear what your side of the story is. It's not like you dumb stupid idiot. You don't know what you're talking about. You should believe me. No, I just is tell me. Tell me what
yeah,
you think. Give me a whole
I
little
agree.
presentation. Give me a breakdown.
My main thing with it is that it's virtually a nothing statement. It adds nothing to any conversation
Hmm.
that you're having. It ultimately halts any conversation you're having because now there is nothing I can say. Like if you're already to the point where that's where the thing you're going to bring up, that's where you're going to back yourself into. There's now literally nothing I can say that's going to trigger any sort of thought process inside of your head because you've now resorted to this. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but it's I don't know. It's just I can't stand when I see it brought up. It hasn't happened in like a day to day life. Like it's not if someone generally walks around and thinks that way, I don't care. It's not going to bother me one way or the other. But it's when it's used as an argument.
Given where we are, given where we are geographically.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, it's when it's brought up as like a talking point in some sort of discussion, like an argument, where it's like, okay, well then like your whole point is that you are a Christian, right? Well, Christianity and hard solipsism are not compatible. So why are you now bringing up topics or talking points from hard solipsism to then somehow prove your Christianity is true? That doesn't make any sense because it's not
Yeah.
compatible with the belief as it is. So it's I don't know. It happens from time to time. But yeah, like I said, this was a short conversation. I figured that this one would be short because there's not a lot to discuss about it. But it does.
Yeah.
It's just a frustrating thing that some people do when I'm listening to debates a lot. Um, but yeah. So, but okay. Well, we're at the hour mark. If you wanted to stop it here, we reached an end to a conversation at a really good time. So that's good.
We did. We did.
So
Pretty timely.
yeah, it was almost like we planned that. But no, I'm gonna go take Kai out because he's been scratching at the door pretty much the whole time. Um, and I know you work in the morning, so okay. Well, do a little outro.
Thank you for watching BarfBag. This has been our first ever episode. I hope you tune in for the next one. My name is Aaron. That's Alex. Oh wait, that's Alex. Um,
Don't
bye.
the my little thing. We're going to. This is going to be posted to probably just YouTube for the time being, anyway. I'm going to work on. Well, we'll probably collectively work on having like links to other stuff because I would like to have ways for people to reach out to us. I want to ultimately have like a Twitter. I don't really care for an Instagram. What are we going to post on there? Like that doesn't make sense to me. But having a Twitter would be probably pretty good. Maybe having like a some way to reach out to us with like topics or questions or whatever else. I want to have some sort of I don't know interaction with the audience type stuff. But in the future, make sure you check for our links and stuff because they will eventually be there. Other than that, yeah, that's Aaron. I'm Alex. It's been
Eventually.
great. This has been a fun first episode. It's only going to get deeper from here, but this has been
Yep.
BarfBag.
Surface level.
Yeah. So, okay.